All right, everyone, welcome back to another writing lesson. Today we're going to talk about something very important, okay, writing good story parts. I haven't seen everybody's writing yet. I've only seen just maybe the writing of 4 or 5 people, and I've seen some really good beginnings. And at this point, everybody should be finished the beginning and they should be ready to move on to the middle. Or maybe you finished and it's time to go back and look at your writing, which we'll be talking about in the next video. But this is still important for everybody, no matter where you are. So we're going to talk about writing good story parts. So we want to be sure our stories have a beginning, a middle, and an ending. And we want to be sure that in our writing, when we finish the beginning, we skip a line and we start the middle. We make a new paragraph, a new block of sentences. And then when the middle is finished, now the middle could be one paragraph, sometimes it's two, sometimes it's three. For now, one is okay. When your middle is finished, you skip another line and then you make a paragraph for your ending. So you're going to have 3 blocks of sentences. And I'd like to go over a few points regarding the beginning. So the one very popular way to start a story, which many great writers use and which we've been talking about since the beginning, is starting with a setting. The setting is when the story takes place and where it takes place. And you'll probably remember in one of our earlier videos all the examples that we came up with. One day, one cold morning, on my birthday, when I was in first grade, on a snowy Monday afternoon, when I was in kindergarten, anything like that is a great way to start with the setting. Okay, and here's another example. One hot summer afternoon, I was at the beach with my friend. What a great way to start a story. We know when it was. It was in summer. It was in afternoon. We know how it felt. It was hot. And we know where you were. You were at the beach. And we even know whom you were with, your friend. Okay, it doesn't have to have all of that information, but you can certainly do it. You can spend 4 or 5 sentences talking about the setting. It doesn't just have to be one. So this is the one that we are already familiar with. Now, one thing that we haven't done yet is start with a talk. And this can be a little tricky because we have to use special marks when we do it. So, you are going to miss the bus if you don't wake up now, said my mom. Get out of the way, screamed my brother as he raced toward me on his sled. These sentences begin with somebody speaking, and that's great. You just have to be careful about these. Look at these boxes. Those marks are called quotation marks, okay? And the first set of quotation marks tell us when somebody is starting to speak. The second set on the right tell us when someone has finished speaking. Now we're going to talk a lot about quotation marks later. I even have a whole video about them, but these are a great way to make your story more interesting and to give more detail, okay? And it's even a good way to start your story. So we've got start with a setting, start with a talk, and then is one of my favorites. Start with an action. And there are many ways to do this. I have 2 particular favorites. One is by using ing. I was reading my favorite comic book on the way home from school. I love it. It tells me what you are doing at the beginning of your story. I was sleeping when the phone rang. I was eating dinner when my best friend ran to my house and rang the doorbell. The phone was ringing when I got home. My baby sister was crying when I finished my dinner. Okay, was ing. That's a great way to start. Another one Oh, here we go. My baby sister was crying when I returned home. There's that was ing. Another kind of action that you can use uses a past verb, a past action that's already finished, like this. By the time we reached the stadium, the game had finished. This story begins by telling us what just happened, what had just happened before we started it. My snowman had already melted by the time I went out to play. So you see how it's got had and ed in red? That's another great way you can start with an action. There are so many more. I'm only showing you a couple of them. These are some of my favorites, some of the ones that I use when I write. You can use them, or look at the books that you have. All those books that you have were written by great writers. See how they started their stories. And that'll give you some ideas too. Okay, so we talked about the beginning. Now let's talk about the middle. So when our beginning is finished, remember, we skip a line and we start a new block of sentences, a new paragraph. So in the middle is where we tell the main part of the story. And we should use words to connect our sentences, kind of like a train. Every train, every car, every wagon is coupled to another. They're all connected. Those wagons won't go anywhere if they're not all linked together, right? And of course, the engine is pulling everything or pushing everything forward. So use words to connect your sentences. Now, some of you already know this, or we've already talked about it. First, then, next, after that, from there. And we also mentioned in our reading lesson that this is how we should think about a story. If somebody asks us, well, what happened in that story? Oh, well, first, and then, after that, from there. Okay, so this set of words is one very good way of connecting your words, but there are many more. You can try something a little bit more difficult, like this. Once I saw that, or when that happened, while she was doing that, at that moment, I felt, as soon as I heard that, you see how many different combinations there are, and there are still many, many more. Before I realized it, I had already missed my train. What a great way to connect sentences. So follow this list that I have here. Okay, I might say, once I saw that I had missed the train, I sat down and started to cry. When that happened, a woman came up to me and asked me if I was okay. While she was doing that, I saw a strange kid in the corner of the train platform laughing. At that moment, I felt silly. As soon as I heard that child laugh, I began to feel ashamed. And before I realized it, I was smiling again. See what I did there? I connected all of my sentences using these phrases. If you want to hear that again, just rewind it a little bit, okay? Oh, here's another one you could use. After he said that. Look at those last two lines. Before I realized it, after he said that, before and after. All these wonderful phrases. And look how they all have commas. First, then, next, after that, from there. Once I saw that, when that happened, all of those have commas. Okay, so they're a very important tool. All right, and that brings us to our ending. Now, most people are probably working on the middle of their story, or they're just finishing up the beginning. Some of you have already reached the ending. How we end a story is just as important as how we begin it. And it's actually very similar to the beginning. We want to choose the action, talk, or feeling for a good ending. Now, action and talk are used at the beginning of the story also. We can use them at the end. And a feeling is a good way to end. Let me show you what I mean. When it was over, I jumped for joy. That's an action. Mom, that was the weirdest day ever, I said. That's a talk. I smile every time I think about that night in the forest. That's a feeling. Any of these could be endings for sentences, and we can even mix them. When the rain stopped, I ran outside and shouted, "Welcome back, beautiful sunlight." It ends with a talk, but it also ends with an action. I ran outside and shouted. Okay? There are so many combinations, and I want you to try different ones. Our best story is usually not our first one. It's when we go back and check it and make some changes. When the story ends, we want the reader to feel the way we felt. Okay? Okay, everyone, keep writing. I hope you use some of the advice in this video, and remember to practice in your black and white composition notebooks, okay? That's really important, and I look forward to seeing everybody's writing. You'll get more advice tomorrow. Bye for now. The end.